So I know a lot of people struggle with court cards, and I think that is because the court cards, more than any other group of cards in the deck, can have different layers in a reading. A court card can reflect you. It can reflect another person in your life. It can offer advice, and it can suggest an action or an event. And there is no clear formula as to which of these the card is representing. But I'm going to try and help you to make to better understand which of these your court card is representing in your reading. So you've done your reading, you've got all the cards out, you've hopefully asked at the very least for a question or a scenario that you're reading for. And to work out, would be my favourite, but there we go, what the Page of Wands is representing, you do need the bigger picture. You need your situation or question in your mind. You need the position of the card in your spread and the other cards around it. And then in my mind, when I'm reading, I am literally going through this list, probably not consciously, but I think in a tarot reading, a court card is most likely to reflect you, or of course, if you're reading for someone else, your querent. So when we are reading for ourselves or someone else, a court card is most likely to represent us or them. And what can happen, and what I see quite a lot in readings, is if somebody is confused, maybe somebody is a parent, they're possibly caring for a parent, maybe they've got a friend that's going through a difficult time, they've got a job that's very demanding as well, you might get lots of court cards. And this can often suggest that somebody is playing lots of roles in their life, wearing lots of social masks that they feel are needed, and feeling confused by that. So always keep an eye out. Lots of court cards can mean that someone is feeling overwhelmed by the roles and responsibilities they have in their life. Or it can mean that somebody feels really torn between, if we pull some out really quickly, I want to have fun, I want to be being creative, I want to be having a good time, but I have caring responsibilities, and I need to do the cooking, and I need to do the shopping, and I also need to go through my finances and plan really carefully what I'm going to do, what and when, and I've got a really good big project at work that is taking up a lot of my time. And so any one of us can be managing all of these roles at any one time. I want to say now, and I think it's really important we cover this, I do not believe that the court cards are representing age or gender. I think they are representing our psychology, and I think a 70-year-old man can be the Page of Cups if they are learning something new or doing something in a playful, creative way. And I think if a 17-year-old boy is looking after a dog or babysitting a sibling, they can be the Queen of Pentacles. So I think it's really important that we take age and gender out of this. If you've got your spread out and you've really tuned in to your situation or your question, the spread, and it just doesn't resonate that the card is reflecting you or your querent, then it is most likely to represent another person in your or their life. Now, if you're reading for yourself, then certain cards may represent particular people in your life. I mean, I do have a friend, lost the Queen of Swords, there we go. I have a Queen of Swords friend. There was a time, it was a while ago now, when my website was down because I had foolishly forgotten to pay one of the payments, and I rang the person that I associate as my Queen of Cups friend. They're very emotional, they're very empathic, and I rang her. And basically, she got really upset. She said, "Oh my God, Maddie, what are you going to do? You must feel so scared. You know, if your website's down." And just something in my mind made me think, this is the wrong person to talk to. And I rang my Queen of Swords friend, who said, what are you ringing me for? Put the phone down and pay the bill. Then your website will be up and running. And I've had this sort of thing come up in readings for myself. If I've got a problem, if I'm struggling with something, and I get the Queen of Cups, sometimes that suggests I need to literally call up that friend or have coffee with her, because I need a bit more emotional connection. Sometimes it's the Queen of Swords friend. The Knight of Swords could represent somebody that is going to challenge you, or somebody that's going to sort of argue a point with you. Whereas the King of Swords could represent somebody that's going to talk it through with you logically and help you to see both sides of the argument. I do remember a Facebook post once where I said that the kings can all represent reaching out to an expert or someone in authority. And somebody had a go at me suggesting that pointing out that they thought I was suggesting that males have authority and responsibility. And of course, I'm not talking about the gender here. But if you are getting kings to represent someone else in your life, it could be somebody that you could reach out for help. So if the court card is not reflecting you, then it is most likely they are reflecting another person in the situation or the question. We need to be really careful here, because classically the Queen of Swords can represent a single or a divorced individual. But if you've asked about work, and you've asked, well, how should I deal with this work situation, and you get the Queen of Swords, then you really need to tune in. Is it reflecting you? Is it saying that you're not listening? Because the Queen of Swords, the darker side of the Queen of Swords, is she doesn't give a monkeys. She's not looking at you. The sword is upright. She's only got her point of view, and that can be a good thing, but it can be a bad thing. So the Queen of Swords could be suggesting that you aren't listening to other people, that you're just saying what you want to say and you're not listening. Or, and this is a really important point, think of the court cards as a continuum. Every court card has a negative side to it. The Queen of Swords is not listening. And every court card has a positive side to it. The Queen of Swords is excellent boundaries and honesty. So when it's reflecting you, you need to ask yourself, is it suggesting I need to be more honest with better boundaries, or that actually I've taken it to the point that I'm not listening? It could reflect someone in your workplace, that it may be suggesting you approach and talk to somebody who's going to be really honest back to you. Or it could be suggesting there's someone in your workplace who's just not listening. Offering advice, I always read the court cards as offering advice. Whether it's reflecting you or whether it's reflecting another, I'm working with my intuition, I'm working with the question, I'm working with the cards around it to really tune in. Is it telling me or my querent to be more like this? Or is it suggesting that somebody is being quite negative in this court card? Or is it suggesting the other way round? And of course, if it's none of these things, then any one of the court cards can be suggesting an action or an event. I've often had the Queen of Swords to represent signing a legal document. The Queen of Swords can represent the ending of something, the cutting away. It can also suggest an author writing things down, writing a list. And so when I get a court card, these are the thoughts that are going through my head. And just choosing a few just to kind of run through. If it's reflecting you, then the Queen of Cups might be suggesting that you need to sit with your emotions a little bit more. Or of course it might be suggesting you have become rather self-absorbed with your emotions. Or it might represent someone in your life who is on one end of the continuum or another. If it's offering advice, for me, the Queen of Cups often is taking the time to focus on your emotional needs. All of the queens are about self-mastery and personal connection. If it's an action or an event, it can represent pregnancy, because the cup can represent the womb. It can represent, depending on the cards either side, if there was the moon there, or other cards to represent perhaps lack or instability. It could be connected with emotions because of the watery connection. It could suggest attending an emotionally nurturing event or a creative event. Arguably one of my favourite court cards. I love the King of Pentacles. If it reflects you, I know that it's the Pentacles, and sometimes people get a bit caught up on Pentacles meaning money, and particularly if you're reading with a deck where the Pentacles are called coins, I can understand that. But in the Rider-Waite deck, let's be very clear, this is not the King of Coins, this is the King of Pentacles, where Pentacles represents the physical world as indicated by the undergrowth around the king, to the point that we can hardly see where the king starts and where the king finishes. So if this reflects you, then it may well suggest that you are really enjoying life, that you are embodying life. When we look at the Suit of Pentacles, all of the court cards have the golden background. Of course, it could suggest that you've become a little bit money orientated, a little bit committed to your finances. If it's reflecting another, again, it's either going to be somebody who's really lifting your spirits, maybe somebody who's inviting you to do something that is nurturing and enjoyable and sensuous. That could be an Italian meal in the garden or an ecstatic dance, anything that is really going to lift your spirits and enjoyable. Or it might suggest that there's someone in your life who is an expert or who has more understanding about something that you can reach out and ask for. One of my favourite meanings for offer advice is to remember to embody joy. I did a reading for a lady many years ago, and it was a beautiful reading, and the King of Pentacles was right in the centre of the reading. And then when I looked at her and I talked about her joy and her creativity and her community, and I looked at her and she was crying. And the honest answer is she'd been through an incredibly difficult period of her life. And what she said to me is, I practice embodying joy. If I have a cup of coffee, I'm going to stop and I'm going to enjoy that cup of coffee. If the birds are singing, I'm going to open the window and listen to them. If it's raining, I'm going to step outside and I'm just going to feel the rain for a moment. And that's always stood with me in my memory. Writing gratitude lists, they're great, I'm all for them. But nothing is better than stopping and embodying joy and pleasure. And yeah, if it suggests action, it might be suggesting you need to plan or embody joy. It might be that you need to reach out for somebody that can help you, either financially or practically, or somebody in authority. If it's an event, a garden party, an art gallery, anything where you really feel joyful, and wherever you feel joyful might be very different to where I feel joyful, but it's going to be a physical event where you feel joyful. I suppose we'll go for another king. I'm going to be doing a series of these, so I can't cover everything in one video, of course, but when we look at the kings, one of the first things we need to do is we need to look and see how they are sitting on their chair. When we look at the King of Pentacles, he looks really settled, he looks really comfortable. And when we look at the King of Wands, he is looking out to the side and he is edging off his seat. If this reflects you, I would question, are you really happy with whatever the question you're reading about is? Are you actually happy with this situation? Or are you in this situation because you feel a sense of duty or obligation? Now, of course, that could be a romantic relationship, it could be a friendship, it could be a work commitment where you feel a sense of duty and obligation, because the kings all have that sense of duty and obligation, but the King of Wands doesn't necessarily want to be there. Now, the King of Wands can also be someone who is inspiring and original. The best leaders are those people that don't want to lead, which is where I get this idea of the visionary leader, somebody who enjoys creativity and enjoying the process much more than they do teaching it or leading it. They are a reluctant leader, and I'm going to argue they're always the best. So if it's reflecting you, it might actually be asking you to step up and lead or teach, even if you don't feel drawn to. And if it's reflecting another, then you've got to ask yourself your same question. Is this meaning that somebody has taken on a responsibility, perhaps towards me, or perhaps in a situation that we're involved in that they don't really feel committed to? Or are you being asked to seek somebody who is unique and visionary? If it's offering advice, I mean, very much the same sort of thing, really. Is it time to give up a responsibility, a duty, or an obligation? Or is it time to rise to it even though you don't want to? And if it's suggesting an action, I often think that the King of Wands is about delegating, to give yourself the time to be more creative or self-nurturing, because I think the King of Wands wants to come down into the Queen or the Knight or the Page. And this is why the court cards are so hard. When you see the court cards here, I want you to think of them as 16 unique personalities. Each of the court cards has a darker side. Each of the court cards has a beautiful, joyful side. And each of the court cards can hold a practical piece of advice for you. As we go through the videos that I will be sharing, I will go through the cards looking at ranks, looking at suits, looking at the best of, looking at the worst of, trying to get more into each of the cards individually. But just for now, when you're doing a reading and you get to a court card, in your mind think, is this reflecting me? Is this reflecting another? If so, is it offering me advice about myself or that other person? And if not, then is it suggesting an action or an event? There is no clear formula for this, I'm afraid. That is the joy of tarot. It is about balancing the spread, the question, and your intuition. And as always, the one thing I will say more than anything else is remember to look at the card. When we stop to look at the cards, and again this is something I'm going to be doing more specifically in future videos, if you've got the Queen and the King of Swords in a spread and you're not trying to remember keywords but you are stopping to look, then you're going to notice all the important details, like one is looking at you, one is not. One has the sword to one side, one has the sword upright. If you stop and look at the cards, they really do make sense.